The night was quiet. The kind of quiet that only a city knows after midnight, when the laughter from restaurants fades into echoes, and the hum of engines becomes a lullaby. The silver-gray SUV rolled slowly to a stop beside a sleek building bathed in soft golden light. Above the door, illuminated letters read, "Diesel Flame." Vin Diesel sat behind the wheel, staring at the sign that carried his name. He should have been proud. Another successful venture, another symbol of achievement. Yet tonight, pride wasn't what filled his chest. It was restlessness. He had been at an awards event earlier, surrounded by flashing cameras and champagne glasses. Everyone had congratulated him on his amazing new restaurant. But deep down, something inside him whispered, "You haven't even seen it the way the world does." He had visited only once. On opening night, cameras had followed his every move, and everything had looked perfect. But that was the show version. The public version. What about when no one was watching? How did his restaurant really run? How did his people really feel? A thought tugged at him, quiet but insistent. Go see for yourself. Without alerting his assistant or driver, Vin slipped out of the SUV, pulling the hood of his black sweatshirt over his head. The street was empty, except for a few flickering streetlights. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to attention, but tonight, he wanted none. The restaurant's front door was locked, as expected. But he knew another way in. Around the corner, through the narrow alley, there was a staff entrance. He remembered it from the floor plans. A faint light glowed under the door. Someone's still here, he thought. He pressed the handle gently. It gave way with a soft click. Inside, the air smelled of roasted herbs, lemon, and a faint trace of smoke. Tables were neatly arranged, glasses sparkling under the dim lights. A soft jazz melody hummed through the speakers, left playing by someone who'd forgotten to turn it off. Vin stepped inside, his footsteps silent against the polished floor. He scanned the room, half expecting to see it empty, but there, near the far corner, a young woman in a server's uniform was wiping down tables. Her movements were slow, tired. The last traces of the night's chaos surrounded her, half-empty water glasses, a dropped napkin, a chair slightly askew. She didn't notice him. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, strands escaping to brush her cheeks. From where he stood, Vin could see the weariness in her shoulders. The kind of fatigue that doesn't come just from a long shift but from life. He almost turned to leave, not wanting to startle her. But then, something unexpected happened. The sound of a muffled sob echoed softly through the empty dining room. Vin froze. It was small, fragile, just a broken sound escaping before she caught herself. She put the cloth down, covered her face with her hands, and leaned against the table. Her shoulders trembled. Vin felt something tighten in his chest. He glanced around, unsure if anyone else was there. No one. Just her and the quiet sound of tears. Why is she crying? He thought. He took a slow step forward, but stopped himself. This wasn't a scene for the owner to intrude on. Not yet. He pulled back into the shadow of a pillar. Watching silently, the girl took a shaky breath and whispered, "I can't do this anymore." Her voice cracking under the weight of exhaustion. Vin's brows furrowed. The words hit harder than he expected. He had seen pain on movie sets, in scripts, in characters he'd played, but this wasn't a line. This was real. She sank into one of the dining chairs, clasping her hands tightly together. "Mum's medicine. Rent due tomorrow," she murmured, barely audible. "And Rico cut my hours again." Vin's heartbeat quickened. Rico, his manager. He made a mental note, but didn't move. He could see now her name tag read Maya. The room felt heavier now, the warm lighting somehow colder. Vin leaned against the wall, staring at the name on the back of the menu lying on the table. Diesel Flame, his name. His brand. But behind it, someone who carried his dream was breaking down in silence. He closed his eyes briefly. He hadn't wanted to come here to meddle, just to observe quietly, maybe enjoy a meal in disguise. But that plan was gone now. The sound of Maya's sob had turned curiosity into something deeper. Responsibility, guilt, maybe even purpose. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, echoing softly through the glass windows. Inside, Maya wiped her tears, took a shaky breath, and forced herself back on her feet. She didn't see the shadow watching Hertha, silent figure, who owned the very ground she walked on. Vin Diesel turned toward the kitchen doors, his jaw tightening. Something's wrong here, he thought. And I'm going to find out what it is. He took one last look at Maya, before disappearing into the dimly lit corridor that led to the back offices, unaware that this quiet, accidental visit would change not just her life, but his as well. The restaurant was almost silent. Except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft clinking of dishes being stacked somewhere in the back, Vin Diesel stayed motionless in the shadows, his pulse steady but heavy. The sound of Maya's quiet sobs still echoed in his ears. He should have turned back. Any other night, he would have, but something inside him refused to let go of what he had just witnessed. He adjusted his hood, making sure his face stayed hidden, and took a slow step forward. His boots made the faintest sound on the wooden floor. The warm amber lights above him flickered slightly, throwing soft shadows across the room. He glanced toward the kitchen door half open, with a strip of bright white light spilling onto the floor. Inside, muffled voices murmured. Staff, still working long after closing. He could make out snippets of conversation. Rico said, "Hours are being cut again," a woman whispered. Another replied tiredly, "I don't even know if I can make rent this month." Vin's brows furrowed. He recognized the name Rico, the general manager. He had been the one Vin trusted most to run the place when he wasn't around. "Handle it like it's your own," Vin had told him during the grand opening. Now, those words echoed bitterly. He moved closer to the doorway, leaning slightly so he could see inside without being seen. The kitchen was spotless but weary, like it had worked hard and given everything it had. Stainless steel counters gleamed under fluorescent light. The air smelled faintly of garlic, butter, and detergent. A tall man with slicked-back hair was talking with Lena, the head chef. Rico's voice was clipped and impatient. "Look, Lena, we've got to cut costs. Corporate wants to see better profit margins. I can't keep paying overtime for everyone who wants extra hours." Lena frowned, her arms crossed. "These people are barely making it as it is. You can't squeeze them like this. They're already overworked." Vin's jaw tightened. Corporate? There was no corporate. It was his restaurant. His money. His dream. Rico had made it sound like a faceless business to deflect blame. "I'll do what I have to do," Rico continued. "If someone can't handle the workload, they can find another job. There are plenty of servers out there." Vin felt a chill run down his spine. His fists curled slightly. The words cut through the soft hum of the kitchen like shards of glass. Maya appeared in the background, carrying a small stack of plates. Her face was composed now, but her eyes were red from crying. She moved quietly, careful not to draw attention. When she reached the sink, Lena walked over to her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You okay, sweetheart?" Maya forced a weak smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just tired." But Vin could see through the lie. Even from across the room, her exhaustion looked deeper than physical. It was the kind that came from fighting life every day and losing more often than winning. As Lena turned away, Rico glanced at Maya and muttered, if she spent less time daydreaming and more time working, maybe she wouldn't always be behind. Maya froze, the words hitting her like a slap. She didn't reply, she just lowered her gaze and continued scrubbing a pan. Vin exhaled slowly, anger simmering in his chest. He'd seen arrogance before, but seeing it here inside, a place built in his name, felt personal. He leaned back against the wall, running a hand over his shaved head, trying to calm the storm building inside him. "So this is what my staff goes through. This is the atmosphere under my roof." He took one last look into the kitchen. Maya was still working quietly, her reflection trembling in the shiny metal of the counter. Lena looked frustrated but too tired to argue further. Rico was already on his phone, scrolling carelessly, detached from the weight of the room. Vin stepped back into the hallway. The air felt colder now, heavier with realization. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel like the star, the producer, or the boss. He felt like a man who had lost touch with his dream, with his people. With what mattered, he wandered through the dining area again, eyes tracing over every corner of the restaurant, the tables, the photos on the walls, the logo engraved on the glass. Everything looked perfect on the surface. But now, perfection felt like a mask. He sat down at one of the empty tables, the one closest to where Maya had been crying earlier. He placed a hand on the polished wood, thinking about how many stories these tables must hold: birthdays, proposals, laughter, and silent tears like hers. A quiet resolve began to form inside him. He couldn't reveal himself just yet, not until he understood why this had happened, how deep it went, and who he could really trust. He would keep coming back, unseen, observing. And when the time came, he would make it right. Vin rose from his seat and took one last look toward the kitchen before walking out the staff door, disappearing into the cool night air. As the door closed softly behind him, Maya exhaled and whispered to herself, "Please, let tomorrow be better." Vin heard those words faintly as he stepped into the alley. He paused, looked up at the cloudy sky, and whispered back under his breath, "It will be. I promise." Morning sunlight leaked through thin curtains, painting soft lines across a cramped apartment bedroom. The alarm clock buzzed, sharp and relentless. A pale hand reached out to silence it. Maya sat up slowly, rubbing her tired eyes. The weight of another day pressed down before her feet even touched the floor. Her room was small, barely enough space for a bed, a table, and a few scattered books. On the dresser sat a single framed photo, her mother, smiling weakly in a hospital gown, holding a bouquet of white lilies. Maya looked at the photo for a moment, her lips trembling into a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Morning, Mum," she whispered softly. From the other room came the faint sound of coughing. Maya jumped up, pulling on her uniform, the same black and white, one she'd worn last night, and hurried into the tiny living room. Her mother, Ruth, sat in an old recliner, wrapped in a blanket, her once strong frame now frail. Oxygen tubes curved along her cheeks. Yet when she saw Maya, her face brightened with warmth that no illness could dim. "Hey, baby," Ruth said, in a hoarse voice. "You're up early again." "Yeah," Maya replied, forcing cheer into her tone. "Double shift today. They're short-staffed." Ruth frowned slightly. "You've been saying that every day this week." Maya smiled faintly, kneeling beside her. "It's fine, Mum, just temporary. Things will get better soon." But even as she said it, her heart ached. The truth was, things hadn't gotten better in a long time. Rent was overdue. The power company had called twice, and the hospital bills kept piling up faster than she could count. She rose and went to the small kitchen corner, heating water for instant coffee. There was barely enough left for 2 cups. As she stirred the mug, her mother's voice drifted softly behind her. "I wish your father could see how hard you're trying." Maya's hand paused mid-stir. "Yeah," she murmured, "he'd probably tell me to slow down." Her father had passed away when she was 14, a quiet man who worked at a repair shop and used to tell her that strength wasn't about muscles. It was about holding on when everything else falls apart. She hadn't realized how heavy those words would become one day. By noon, Maya was at the bus stop, her uniform neatly pressed but her eyes rimmed with fatigue. The city bustled around her, people hurrying to offices, laughter echoing from cafe windows. For them, it was just another day. For her, it was survival. When she reached Diesel Flame, the scent of freshly baked bread and roasted garlic drifted out the door. It used to comfort her once. Now, it only reminded her how far behind she was, both in life and at work. Inside, Rico stood by the counter, tablet in hand, barking orders. "Maya, you're late by 3 minutes." She looked at the clock. It was true. She offered an apologetic smile. "Sorry." The bus. He cut her off, sharply. "Excuses won't pay bills. Be on time tomorrow." Her stomach twisted, but she bit her tongue and nodded. "Yes, sir." As she tied her apron, Lena, the head chef, gave her a sympathetic look. "Don't let him get to you. He's been under pressure from upstairs." "Yeah," Maya replied softly. "I just don't want to lose this job." Lena leaned closer. You won't. You're one of the good ones. That small kindness lit something fragile inside Maya, a spark of hope. Brief but real. By closing time, her feet ached, and her hands were raw from scrubbing dishes and clearing tables. Yet when the last customer left, she stayed behind to finish cleaning. Rico had already gone, leaving only the faint scent of his cologne and his echoing commands behind. The restaurant lights dimmed to a golden haze. Soft jazz played through the speakers. For a few minutes, she allowed herself to breathe, but when she glanced at her phone, her heart sank. A message from the landlord. Final notice. Pay by tomorrow or vacate. Her chest tightened. She stared at the screen, her hands trembling. She thought about her mother, about the hospital calls, about the unpaid bills sitting on the kitchen table. It all came crashing down at once. The silence of the restaurant swallowed her as her composure broke. She sat at a table, her tears spilling freely now, the kind of tears that come from exhaustion deeper than words. She didn't know that, hidden just beyond the shadows of the dining hall, someone was watching. Vin Diesel stood near the doorway, frozen, his expression unreadable. He had returned quietly that night, unable to stay away. He had come to learn, but what he found was heartbreak, and as he watched Maya crumble beneath the weight of life, a quiet promise began to form inside him. This place bears my name. No one under this roof should ever feel this broken again. The night was restless. Vin sat alone in his penthouse apartment, the lights of Los Angeles sprawling beneath him like a glittering sea. Yet, even with the skyline stretched wide before him, he couldn't shake the image burned into his mind, Maya sitting at that empty table, crying quietly under the glow of his restaurant's lights. He had replayed the scene a dozen times. Already her trembling shoulders, the sound of her muffled sobs, the way she whispered to herself as if no one in the world cared enough to listen. And the truth that haunted him most wasn't what she said. It was what it revealed. He had built Diesel Flame to be a dream, a place that celebrated passion, family, and food made with love. It was supposed to honor the values his late father taught him: hard work, loyalty, humility. But what he had witnessed last night was the opposite: exhaustion, fear, and silence. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. How did I let this happen? Across the room, the fireplace flickered faintly, shadows dancing against the walls. Vin stared into the flames, memories surfacing from long ago, before fame, before the cameras, before the endless expectations. He remembered working double shifts in small neighborhood diners as a teenager, trying to make ends meet. Back then, he had seen people like Maya every day, dreamers, fighters, people just trying to survive another sunrise. He had promised himself he'd never forget those faces once he made it big. But somewhere along the line, maybe he had. He rose from the chair and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the rain smear the reflections of neon lights. A restaurant, not just food, he muttered to himself. It's family, and my family's hurting. Those words hung heavy in the air. He turned toward his desk, where a framed photo sat his father, smiling proudly beside a teenage Vin, both wearing grease-stained overalls from their old auto shop days. Underneath the photo, his father's favorite quote was engraved: "If you put your name on something, you better protect the people who carry it." Vin picked up the frame, staring at it for a long time. Then, setting it back down gently, he exhaled. "I'm sorry, Pop," he whispered. "I forgot what that meant." The decision formed inside him slowly, like dawn breaking through darkness. He wasn't going to send an assistant. He wasn't going to call Rico. He would go himself quietly, consistently, until he understood what was really going on inside Diesel Flame. The next night, he returned. This time, dressed down in a plain black t-shirt and cap. No bodyguard, no entourage. Just him. He sat at the bar in the far corner, pretending to scroll through his phone while observing. The restaurant buzzed with early evening energy. Laughter from tables, the clink of silverware, the murmur of conversation. To an outsider, it looked perfect. But Vin had learned to see through the shine. Maya was serving table for balancing plates, gracefully, despite the fatigue in her eyes. She smiled politely at guests, her tone warm. professional, but her eyes never smiled back. Lena passed by, giving her a quick nod of encouragement. Rico, meanwhile, stood near the host station. Checking his phone more than he checked his staff, Vin's jaw clenched as he watched. Every movement, every glance painted a clearer picture of what this place had become: efficient, polished, profitable. But cold dot at one point, a glass slipped from Maya's tray and shattered near the bar. She flinched, immediately kneeling to pick up the shards. Rico rushed over, not to help, but to scold. "Maya, how many times do I have to tell you to be careful?" he snapped, voice sharp enough for customers to hear. I'm sorry, sir. I'll clean it up," she stammered, her hands trembling slightly. Vin's blood boiled. Before he could move, Lena stepped in. "Rico, enough," she said firmly. "It was an accident." Rico glared but walked off, muttering under his breath. Maya gave Lena a small, grateful smile before quietly returning to work. Vin exhaled slowly, fighting the urge to stand up and reveal himself right there. But not yet. Not until he knew everything. He stayed until closing again, watching how the night drained the light out of his staff. The last few minutes before the doors locked, he saw Maya leaning against the counter, her eyes distant, probably thinking of the same problems she'd cried about the night before, and then it hit him. The uncomfortable truth. He wasn't just watching a problem unfold. He was part of it by putting his trust in others. By stepping away and assuming things were fine, he had created this gap, a distance between the dream and the reality. As he walked back out into the night, Vin made a vow under his breath. "Tomorrow, I start fixing it." Not as Vin Diesel, the actor. Not as the name on the door. But as a man who owes his people something better. That night, as rain began to fall again, Vin climbed into his SUV and looked back at the restaurant, glowing faintly through the storm. He whispered, "I'm coming back for you, Maya, for all of you." Then he drove off into the darkness, determined for the first time in a long while to listen. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds, washing Los Angeles in a golden haze. But for Vin Diesel, it wasn't a morning of luxury or calm. He wasn't waking up to movie scripts or studio calls. He was waking up with a plan. He pulled on a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a baseball cap, the same disguise he'd used the previous night. No one would look twice at him now. The goal wasn't attention. It was truth. When he arrived at Diesel Flame just before lunch rush, the staff was setting up. The air smelled of roasted garlic, simmering sauces, and freshly baked bread. Vin paused by the entrance, taking in the familiar scent that once symbolized pride and joy. Now, it felt different, heavier, quieter. He walked in casually and took a seat at a corner table. Most of the team didn't recognize him. After all, the owner rarely came by unannounced. Rico, however, froze the moment he saw him. "Ah, Mr. Diesel," Rico said, forcing a smile. "We weren't expecting you today." Vin gave him a calm, unreadable look. "Didn't want you to. Just here for lunch. Pretend I'm not even here." Rico nodded stiffly, clearly uneasy, and disappeared into the kitchen to whisper something to the staff. Within minutes, the energy of the place shifted. People moved faster, voices dropped. The calm hum of teamwork turned into nervous rustling. Vin watched every detail, every glance, every hesitant movement. Maya passed by his table, her usual warm smile replaced by visible anxiety. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I get you something to drink?" "Water's fine," Vin said gently. "And relax. You're doing great." She blinked in surprise. Thank you," she said softly, before hurrying away. As he waited, Vin's attention drifted to the kitchen door. Through the small glass window, he could see chaos, a cook dropping utensils, someone whispering harshly, another rolling their eyes. He stood quietly and walked toward it. "Sir, you're not allowed in," Rico began. But Vin raised his hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "My name's on the sign outside, isn't it?" Rico froze. Vin pushed the door open and stepped inside. The kitchen, once a symbol of energy and passion, felt strained. The air was hot and thick with tension. He saw the head chef, Carlos, yelling at a young line cook for burning a sauce. Another worker scrubbed pans furiously, muttering under his breath. "Hey," Vin said quietly. The room went silent instantly. Every head turned toward him. "I'm not here to check your skills," he continued. "I just want to see how things are really going. Be honest with me, are you guys okay?" No one answered. The silence was so heavy, even the sound of boiling soup seemed loud. Finally, Carlos spoke, his voice tight. "We're fine, boss. Just a bit short-staffed, that's all." Vin nodded slowly. "Or overworked?" Carlos's eyes darted away. That told him everything then. From behind the prep counter, a voice spoke up, shaky but brave. "It was Maya, sir," she said, clutching a tray. "Some of us have been working double shifts. Rico said overtime pay was delayed because of system updates, but it's been weeks." Rico's face flushed red. Maya, that's not Vin, turned sharply toward him. "Let her speak." The kitchen froze again. Maya's hands trembled slightly, but she continued. We love this place, sir. We're proud to work here. But sometimes it feels like no one listens when we're tired or hurting. Last week, one of the waiters fainted during dinner rush. We just kept serving." Her voice cracked on the last word, and Ving felt something twist in his chest. He looked around the room, meeting each pair of eyes. Some looked down, others blinked away silent exhaustion. This wasn't the family he'd dreamed of building. This was survival. Vin took a deep breath. "Rico," he said slowly, "step into my office." Now, Rico opened his mouth to protest, but the weight of Vin's stare shut him down. He followed obediently, and the door closed behind them. Inside the small office, Vin leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "You told me everything was running smoothly," Vin said quietly. "You said the staff was happy, that morale was great. That's what you told me, right?" Rico shifted nervously. "Yes, sir. But you know how workers exaggerate." Vin slammed his hand on the desk, the sound echoing. "Don't you ever disrespect them like that again." His voice was low, but powerful. "Those people out there are the reason this restaurant is alive. Without them, Diesel Flame is just a sign on a building." Rico swallowed hard, his confidence melting away. Vin took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Starting today, things are going to change, and you're going to help fix what you broke." When he stepped out of the office, the kitchen was silent again. Maya and the others avoided his eyes, unsure what would come next. Vin looked at them all and said quietly, "No one here is invisible anymore." Then he gave Maya a small nod, one that said, "I heard you, Dot," and for the first time, a faint smile flickered across her face. The restaurant had emptied out after another long evening. Chairs were flipped on tables, lights dimmed, and the last pots clinked softly in the kitchen sink. Vin stayed behind. He stood by the front window, watching the rain streak down the glass. For the first time since opening Diesel Flame, he wasn't thinking about profit margins or reviews. He was thinking about people, his people. Behind him, soft footsteps echoed. "Mr. Diesel." He turned to see Maya standing hesitantly by the counter, clutching her worn-out apron. She looked nervous, her eyes darting toward the exit. "Hey," Vin said gently. "It's just us now. You can call me Vin." She smiled faintly. "Okay." Then he gestured toward a booth near the window. "Sit down for a minute. You've earned it." She hesitated, then slowly slid into the seat across from him. Her hands fidgeted with the hem of her apron. The silence between them was heavy but not uncomfortable, like two people who'd both been holding something in for too long. Vin finally spoke. "You know, when I started this place, it wasn't supposed to feel like this. It was supposed to be about love, food, family, and people who care about each other. But somewhere, I lost sight of that." Maya looked up at him, her voice soft. "It still can be that way." Her words hit him like a quiet truth. He leaned forward. "Tell me something, Maya. Why were you crying that night?" Her eyes filled instantly. She looked down, blinking rapidly. "I didn't mean for anyone to hear me. I was just tired. Then repeated. She nodded. "Tired of pretending everything's fine. I'm working 2 jobs, morning shifts at a diner, nights here. My mum's sick, she has kidney issues, and I'm the only one taking care of her. Rent's due next week, medical bills are piling up, and when Rico said our overtime pay was delayed, she trailed off, her voice breaking. Ving listened quietly, every word carving into him. She wasn't just an employee, she was someone carrying the weight of a world that never gave her a break. I didn't want to cry, she whispered. But that night, I just couldn't hold it in anymore. For a long time, Ven said nothing. Then, softly, you shouldn't have to. Maya looked up, confused. What do you mean? He leaned back, his tone steady but filled with warmth. You shouldn't have to break down in silence just to survive. This restaurant was built on family, and family takes care of its own. You hear me? Her lip trembled. I do, but no one's ever said that to me before. Vin smiled sadly. Then maybe it's time someone did. He stood, pacing slowly, deep in thought. Maya, I can't fix everything overnight, but I promise you this, things are going to change around here. Fair hours, paid overtime, support for anyone who needs it. No one gets left behind. Maya's eyes widened. You mean that? Ven nodded. Every word. A silence settled between them again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was full of unspoken gratitude, and the fragile start of trust. As Ven looked at her, he saw more than an employee. He saw a reflection of the person he once was, someone fighting battles no one else could see. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have been here more. Maya shook her head. You're here now. That's what matters. Outside, thunder rolled faintly, followed by the rhythmic patter of rain. The city felt distant, peaceful. Ven glanced toward the kitchen, where the faint smell of roasted garlic still lingered. You know, he said with a half smile, I used to wash dishes just like you. My boss never knew my name. Maya laughed softly through her tears. Somehow, I don't believe that it's true, he chuckled. And I swore if I ever owned a restaurant, everyone who worked for me would be seen, respected, and heard. Guess I broke that promise for a while. She reached out, touching the table gently. Maybe you just forgot. But you remembered now. Her words were simple, but they hit deep. Vin looked at her, admiration in his eyes. You've got strength, Maya, more than you realize. You didn't just remind me what this place should be. You reminded me who I should be. For the first time, Maya smiled, genuinely, softly. Thank you, Vin. As she stood to leave, Vin said, Hey, one more thing. She turned back. Your mum. How's she doing? Maya hesitated. She's stable for now, but she needs treatment soon. I'm trying to save up. Ving nodded slowly, thoughtful. We'll talk tomorrow. I have an idea that might help. Maya frowned, puzzled. Why you don't have to asterisk, he smiled. I want to. As she walked out into the rain, Ving watched from the window, her silhouette fading into the misty night. Inside, he whispered to himself, time to start being the man Dad raised me to be. And with that, he turned off the lights, determined to rebuild not just a restaurant, but a family. The next morning, Diesel Flame felt different. The sunlight that filtered through the large glass windows seemed brighter, warmer, as if the restaurant itself was breathing easier. The same tables, the same chairs, the same soft jazz playing in the background. Yet there was something in the air that had quietly shifted. Vin arrived early, dressed as simply as ever, a plain white t-shirt, black jeans, and a calm expression. No entourage, no cameras, just purpose. He walked through the doors and greeted the morning prep crew with a smile. Good morning, family. The staff froze for a second. Family. No one had ever heard him use that word before. Not in the restaurant at least. Carlos, the head chef, blinked. Good morning, boss, Vin chuckled. It's Vin, no boss talk today. He rolled up his sleeves and walked straight into the kitchen. All right, what's on today's menu? Who's making breakfast for the team? The kitchen exchanged puzzled glances. It wasn't common for the owner, especially a celebrity, to stroll in like one of them. But before they could react, Veng grabbed an apron, tied it around his waist, and started chopping onions with practiced ease. Let's feed the crew, he said. Grinning. Carlos, amused and slightly stunned, joined him. Within minutes, the kitchen filled with the smell of sizzling butter and caramelized onions. The others soon followed, laughter bubbling up between them like it hadn't in months. By the time the first plates hit the counter, everyone was smiling. Later that morning, Vin gathered the team in the dining area. Maya stood near the back, her hands nervously clasped together. Rico was there too, clearly tense but quieter than usual. Vin looked at them, really looked, before speaking. I opened Diesel Flame because I believed food could bring people together. But somewhere along the way, I let distance and business get in the way of that. Last week, I saw something I can't unsee. People exhausted, unheard, and hurting in a place that's supposed to feel like home. He paused, letting the silence sink in. That ends today. The staff exchanged glances, curious but cautious. Starting now, Vin continued, overtime will be paid on time, no excuses. We're also creating a staff wellness fund. Anyone who's struggling with rent, with health, with life, we help each other. We're a team, not a chain of paychecks. Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Carlos's eyes softened. Maya lowered her head, blinking fast. Vin wasn't done. Also, I want open-door communication. Every person here, from the dishwasher to the manager, has a voice. If something's wrong, I want to hear it. Not through rumors, not through whispers, but directly. He turned his gaze to Rico, his tone calm but firm. Rico, you've done good work keeping this place running. But from now on, leadership means listening, not commanding. Understand? Rico nodded stiffly. Yes, sir. I mean, yes. Then good. Vin smiled faintly. Because I want you to succeed, too. The tension slowly lifted. For the first time, people looked hopeful. Then Vin looked at Maya. Maya, can you come here for a second? Her heart skipped. She stepped forward, unsure what to expect. Vin reached into his pocket and handed her a small envelope. This is for your mum's treatment. Consider it part of our new employee support program. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a check, more money than she could ever imagine. Her eyes widened, and tears welled instantly. Vin, I can't accept this. Yes, you can, he said softly. You've given this place your heart. It's time it gives something back. She covered her mouth, speechless. The rest of the staff looked on, visibly moved. Some clapped quietly, others just smiled through tears. Vin continued. I don't want anyone here to feel invisible ever again. This isn't just a restaurant, it's family, and I take care of my family. The rest of the day, the mood was lighter than it had been in months. People laughed, shared jokes, and even sang along with the radio while prepping dinner service. The sound of unity filled the air. At one point, Vin stood by the kitchen door, watching. Maya was laughing with the pastry chef, her smile brighter than ever. Rico was helping a new waiter carry dishes, no longer barking orders, but guiding. Carlos was whistling while stirring a pot. It was exactly how Vin had dreamed it would be. Lena walked up beside him, folding her arms. You've changed the energy here, Vin. They needed this. He nodded slowly. So did I. Lena smiled knowingly. What now? Vin looked out across the room, the golden lights reflecting in his eyes. Now, he smiled faintly. Now, I rebuild Diesel Flame, not with money, but with heart. As the first guests of the evening began to arrive, Vin slipped quietly into the background. He didn't need to be the center of attention anymore. The restaurant was alive again, and for the first time in a long time, so was he. A week had passed since Vin's quiet transformation of Diesel Flame. The energy inside the restaurant was completely different. Laughter echoed between the tables. The staff moved with confidence, and even the food tasted better. It wasn't just because of the recipes, it was because people were finally working with joy again. But while things inside the restaurant began to heal, one thought kept tugging at Vin's mind, Maya's mother. Every night after closing, he found himself thinking about her. The way Maya's eyes had filled with hope when he handed her that envelope haunted him. It wasn't pride he felt, it was responsibility. He wanted to make sure she was truly okay, so one afternoon he decided to visit. The hospital was small, a quiet county facility just outside the city. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, and the distant beep of monitors echoed through the sterile corridors. Ving walked in with a bouquet of fresh white lilies in one hand and a simple smile. When he reached room 214, he hesitated. For a man who'd faced movie sets, stunts, and roaring crowds, it was strange how nervous he felt standing at that door. He knocked softly. "Come in," a frail voice said. Vin stepped inside. The room was modest, a single bed, a vase of fading flowers, a few photos taped to the wall. On the bed sat a woman with gentle eyes and thinning hair. Despite her tiredness, she smiled when she saw him. "Mrs. Lopez?" Vin asked quietly. She blinked, confused for a moment, then her eyes widened. You're Vin Diesel." Vin chuckled softly. "Guilty as charged." She tried to sit up straighter. "Oh my goodness. My daughter talks about you all the time. Well, about the restaurant, I mean. What are you doing here?" He stepped closer, placing the bouquet beside her bed. "I came to see how you're doing. Maya told me a little about you." Tears welled in her eyes immediately. "That girl worries too much. I told her not to burden anyone." "She didn't burden me," Vin said gently. "She inspired me." Mrs. Lopez looked at him curiously. "Inspired you?" Vin nodded. "She reminded me why I started Diesel Flame in the first place. She reminded me that people matter more than anything." The older woman smiled faintly. That sounds like something her father would have said. He always told her to lead with her heart. Her expression softened. He passed away 3 years ago. Since then, Maya's been holding the world on her shoulders. Vin's chest tightened. "She's stronger than she knows." "She gets that from him," Mrs. Lopez said proudly, a tear slipping down her cheek. "But she's been scared lately, scared that all her hard work won't be enough. She doesn't say it, but I see it in her eyes." Vin took a deep breath, his voice low. "Not anymore. She's got a family behind her now, at Diesel Flame. I'll make sure she never carries that weight alone again." Mrs. Lopez looked at him for a long moment, as if searching his face for sincerity. What she found there made her smile through her tears. "You have a kind soul, Mr. Diesel." He shook his head. "Just trying to remember who I was supposed to be." They talked for a while about Maya, about the restaurant, about life before fame. Vin found comfort in the simplicity of the moment. No flashing cameras, no press, no expectations. Just two people connected by shared humanity. Before leaving, he placed a hand gently over hers. "Mrs. Lopez, you focus on getting better, okay? I'll take care of everything else." She squeezed his hand weakly. "You already have." Later that evening, Maya arrived at the hospital after her shift. She stopped in shock when she saw the flowers by her mother's bed and the small note beside them. Signed simply, "Family takes care of family." Vin, her mother, smiled softly. "He's a good man, that one." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "He came here, he did, and he meant every word." Maya sat by the bed, wiping her eyes. "Mum, I don't even know what to say anymore." Her mother chuckled weakly. "Then don't say anything. Just keep believing that good people still exist." That night, as Maya drove home, her heart felt lighter than it had in years. She looked out the window at the rain-slicked streets and whispered, "Thank you, Vin." Meanwhile, across town, Vin sat in his office at the restaurant, the lights dimmed. On his desk lay a small photo of his father beside a framed quote that read, "Success means nothing if the people who helped you get there are unhappy." He smiled faintly and whispered, "You'd be proud, Dad. I'm finally getting it right." The hum of the city outside faded into the background as he leaned back, feeling peace for the first time in a long while. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning, because healing people's hearts wasn't a one-time act. It was a journey, and Vin Diesel was ready to walk every step of it. The following morning, sunlight spilled gently across the Diesel Flame restaurant, casting warm rays through its glass front. The dining area, once dim and moody the night before, now looked like a new world, bright, open, and full of life. The early staff moved quietly, preparing for the day's service. Maya stood near the counter. Her sleeves rolled up, hair tied neatly back. Despite her tired eyes, she wore a faint smile, the kind that tries to hide what's still breaking inside. She adjusted cutlery, wiped down tables, and spoke softly to herself. Vin Diesel walked in silently through the front door. This time, no hood, no disguise. He wanted to see her without shadows or secrets. The sunlight caught the edge of his leather jacket, his calm presence immediately drawing the attention of the manager, Carlos. "Mr. Diesel." "Good morning, sir," Carlos exclaimed, startled but delighted. "We didn't know you were coming today." Vin nodded politely. "Just wanted to grab breakfast here. Thought I'd see how things run in daylight." Carlos grinned nervously and rushed to alert the kitchen. But Vin's eyes weren't on him. They were fixed on Maya. She didn't notice him at first. She was focused on straightening the menus, lost in her thoughts. Vin quietly observed her movements, gentle, precise, but filled with unspoken pain. There was something fragile, yet strong about her. Finally, she turned and froze. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Why, she began. Vin smiled kindly. "Vin, just Vin today." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she stammered, "I'm so sorry about last night." "I didn't mean to," he raised a hand, stopping her gently. "You didn't cause anything. You reminded me what this place is supposed to mean." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" Vin looked around the restaurant. "When I built this place, I wanted it to be a home, not just for guests, but for the people who work here. Somewhere they feel seen, safe, appreciated. Somewhere that feels like family." Her lips quivered slightly, her eyes glistening. That's beautiful." Vin took a step closer, lowering his voice. "You work hard, Maya, I see it, but I also saw your tears. What's really going on?" Her composure cracked. The truth, heavy and long buried, rose to the surface. "It's just life," she whispered. "Bills, long hours, my mum's medical treatment. Sometimes it feels like no matter how much I try, I'm always a step behind." Vin's jaw tightened. Her words struck deep. "You shouldn't have to fight that battle alone," he said softly. For a long moment, they stood in silence, just two souls in a restaurant filled with quiet echoes of resilience and pain. Then Vin said, "Come by my office later. I want to talk about something that might help." Maya nodded, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Mr. Diesel." He smiled again. "It's Vin." As he walked toward the kitchen, she watched him, unsure what he meant. But, for the first time in a long while, her heart felt lighter, as if hope had quietly sat down beside her. Later that afternoon, the restaurant was quieter than usual. The lunch rush had faded, and a golden calm filled the air. In his private office at the back of Diesel Flame, Vin sat behind a sleek oak desk. His hands were clasped, eyes distant, still thinking about Maya's words that morning. When the soft knock came on the door, he already knew who it was. "Come in," he said. Maya stepped inside, clutching her apron nervously. She looked out of place among the polished furniture and framed photos of Vin with other celebrities. Her eyes darted to one photo of Vin and his late friend, Paul Walker. It made her smile faintly. Vin noticed. "That photo keeps me grounded," he said quietly. "Reminds me to live for something bigger than myself." Maya nodded, her voice low. "That's a nice way to live." Vin motioned for her to sit. "You told me earlier about your mum. How's she doing?" Maya hesitated, twisting her hands. "She's strong, stronger than she should have to be. But the treatments are expensive, and I'm working double shifts just to keep up. I've thought about quitting school to focus on paying the bills." Vin frowned. "You're in school too?" She nodded. "Business management. I wanted to learn how to run something like this someday. But life had other plans." For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then Vin leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. "Maya, I didn't build this restaurant just to serve food. I built it to give people a chance, The same way someone once gave me one. Her brows furrowed. What do you mean? He smiled faintly. Before Hollywood, I worked as a bouncer, a mechanic, even a dishwasher. I know what it's like to be unseen, to work hard, and still feel invisible. That's why I started this place, to help others rise. He reached into a folder on his desk and pulled out a document. You've been here less than a year, but you've shown more heart than most people do in a lifetime. So here's what I'm offering. I want to promote you to assistant manager with full benefits, flexible hours, and a scholarship fund that covers the rest of your degree. Maya's mouth fell open. Wait, you can't be serious. Vin chuckled softly. I never joke about second chances. Her eyes filled instantly with tears. Ving, I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep believing in yourself, he replied. That's all I need to hear. She wiped her cheeks and nodded shakily. I will, I promise. Vin smiled. Good, because I think your story's just getting started. As Maya left the office, the sun broke through the clouds outside, flooding the hallway with warm light. She paused by the door. Looking back once more, her eyes full of gratitude and disbelief. For the first time in years. The future didn't feel impossible. A few days later, Diesel Flame felt different. The staff noticed it first. The quiet waitress, who once kept her head down, was now walking with a new kind of confidence. Maya's promotion had spread through the team like a secret everyone was proud of. She still wore her simple black uniform. But there was something new in her posture, hope. Her name badge now read Assistant Manager, and every time she caught sight of it, a tiny smile tugged at her lips. Ving watched her from the corner booth that morning, pretending to scroll through his phone as he sipped black coffee. He admired how she handled people, the way she spoke gently to the new waiter, helped the cook with an order, and even stayed calm when the espresso machine sputtered mid-shift. She wasn't just working anymore, she was leading. After the rush slowed, Ven waved her over. You've been busy, he said, smiling. Maya chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I'm trying to make sure you don't regret the promotion. Ven leaned back. If anything, you're proving I made the right call. Her expression softened. Thank you, Ven, really. My mum cried when I told her. She said she hadn't seen me this happy in years. Vin's smile faded slightly at the mention of her mother. Something about the name, Maya's last name, Lopez, had lingered in his thoughts since the day she signed the paperwork. Maya, he said carefully. What's your mum's name? Carmen, she replied. Carmen Lopez. Why? Vin's breath caught for a moment. He remembered that name faintly, but enough to make his pulse quicken. He leaned forward, his tone cautious. Was she ever in LA? Maybe 25 years ago. Maya frowned, thinking she lived there before I was born. Why? Vin hesitated, memories flickering like old film reels in his mind of a young woman who worked long shifts at a garage, who once helped a struggling actor fix his car. When he couldn't afford a mechanic, he hadn't thought about her in years. Your mum, Ven began slowly. Did she ever work at a place called Tony's Auto? Maya's eyes widened. Wait, yes. She used to tell me stories about that place. Said she worked there with some really nice guys before moving here. Vin exhaled, stunned. I used to work there, too. Back before my first film. Your mum, she helped me once when my car broke down. She even refused to take money for it. Maya blinked in disbelief. You knew my mum? He nodded, smiling softly. She was kind, the kind of person who believed in people before they believed in themselves. I never forgot her. For a moment, the room felt still, like the universe had quietly closed a circle neither of them knew existed. Maya's eyes shimmered. Maybe this was meant to happen, she whispered. Vin smiled, voice low and sincere. Yeah, maybe it was. Outside, the afternoon sun spilled through the windows, bathing the restaurant in golden light, as if the past and present had finally found each other. That evening, Diesel Flame was alive again, laughter echoing from tables, the scent of grilled herbs and citrus in the air. But Ving wasn't thinking about the menu or the guests tonight. His mind was somewhere else 20 years back, in a dusty auto shop where a woman named Carmen Lopez once smiled through the oil and sweat, telling him, "One day, you'll make it big, kid. Just don't forget where you came from." He never did. Now, sitting in his office, he pulled out his phone and searched for Carmen's name. After a few calls, a mutual contact from Los Angeles confirmed it. She had moved states years ago and was now battling health issues. Ven leaned back in his chair, his heart heavy. Maya had inherited her mother's spirit, the same kindness, the same quiet strength. He couldn't just sit by knowing what they were going through. Moments later, there was a soft knock at the door. Maya peeked in, holding a small notepad. "You wanted to see me." Vin smiled. "Yeah, come in." She entered, a little nervous. "Is everything okay?" Vin nodded slowly. "Better than okay. I just found out something about your mum, and I think it's time I repay a debt." Her brows furrowed. "A debt?" He smiled faintly. "Your mum once helped me when I had nothing. She didn't know who I was or what I'd become. She just helped because that's who she is. And now, it's my turn." Maya's voice trembled. "Ven, you don't have to. I do," he interrupted gently. "Not because I owe her, but because people like your mum remind the world that kindness still matters." He reached for a folder on his desk and handed it to her. Inside was an envelope with her mother's name on it, and beneath it, a medical grant form bearing the Diesel Foundation logo. "What's this?" she whispered. Ven leaned forward, his tone soft. "Full coverage for your mum's treatment, every expense. I talked to my foundation this afternoon. We'll handle everything, no conditions attached." Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she covered her mouth, stunned. "Vin, I can't accept this. It's too much." "No," he said firmly. "It's exactly enough. This isn't charity, Maya. This is gratitude, 20 years overdue." Her voice broke. "She's going to cry when she hears this." Vin smiled warmly. "Then maybe I'll tell her myself. I'd like to visit her, if that's okay." Maya nodded, tears falling freely now. She loved that. Vin stood and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Tell her Vin never forgot. And neither will I." As Maya left the office, clutching the folder to her chest, she paused at the door and turned back. "Ven, you really are everything she said you'd be." He chuckled softly. "Let's just say your mum had good instincts." When she walked away, Vin looked out the window toward the city lights, a quiet promise echoing in his heart. He'd never forget where he came from, and he'd never stop giving back to those who believed in him first. 2 days later, Vin Diesel stood in front of a modest single-story house on the outskirts of town. The yard was small but tidy, lined with pink azaleas and a wooden chair on the porch that looked lovingly worn. It wasn't the kind of mansion Vin was used to visiting, but somehow, it felt more like home than any of them ever did. He took a slow breath and knocked. Inside. There was a shuffle. Then a soft voice called, "Just a minute." The door creaked open, revealing a woman in her late 50s. Her hair, streaked with silver, was tied back, and her warm brown eyes sparkled with quiet strength, even through the fatigue of illness. "Carmen," Ven said gently. She squinted, her hand instinctively going to her chest. "Wait, I know that voice." Her eyes widened as realization hit. "No, it can't be Vin Diesel." He smiled, the same shy grin he'd had decades ago. "It's me, Carmen." She gasped, then laughed in disbelief, tears forming instantly. "Oh my lord." After all these years, before he could say anything, she threw her arms around him. Despite the years and the weight of time, her hug felt exactly the same, warm, genuine, grounding. "You haven't changed a bit," she said, stepping back to look at him. "Well, maybe just a little more famous." He chuckled softly. "And a few more wrinkles." They both laughed, and for a moment, it felt like the world hadn't changed at all. She led him inside, offering him tea from a chipped floral cup. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon and lavender, simple, comforting scents. Family photos lined the shelves. Maya, as a little girl, Carmen holding her proudly, and even an old faded picture of the garage. Tony's auto. Ven picked it up, his smile fading slightly. You kept this? Carmen nodded. Of course. Those were hard years. But good ones too. You used to talk about your dreams all the time. Everyone thought you were crazy, except me. He grinned. Yeah, you were the only one who believed that kid could be something. Her eyes softened. And you did become something, Vin. But I'm even prouder of the man you still are. Vin's throat tightened. You helped me when no one else would. I never forgot that. Carmen reached over and squeezed his hand. You didn't owe me anything, sweetheart. I just did what was right. He looked at her, emotion flickering in his eyes. Then, let me do what's right for you now. Maya told me about your treatments. Everything's going to be covered completely. The foundation will handle it. Her lips parted, eyes glistening. Ven, you didn't have to. I wanted to, he said firmly. You gave me a start when I had nothing. Now, it's my turn. Carmen's tears fell freely as she whispered, God bless you, Vin. You were always meant for something bigger. He smiled through the ache in his chest. Maybe. But people like you made sure I got there. As he left that evening, the sun dipped low behind the hills, bathing the small house in gold. Vin looked back once, Carmen waving from the porch, her eyes shining with gratitude. For Vin, that wave said everything words couldn't. He'd finally repaid a kindness that had shaped his life. The next morning, Diesel Flame buzzed with its usual rhythm, clinking dishes, murmured conversations, the soft hum of jazz in the background. But Vin walked in with something new in his heart, a sense of purpose that burned brighter than ever. After visiting Carmen, he couldn't shake her words. You were always meant for something bigger. He had achieved fame, success, and fortune, but none of that had ever felt as meaningful as that moment on her porch, drinking tea from a chipped cup and realizing the true weight of gratitude. Vin called for a team meeting before opening hours. The kitchen staff paused their prep, waiters gathered in a semicircle, and Maya stood near the front, curious and slightly nervous. Vin looked around at them all, faces young and old, tired but hopeful. I've been thinking, he began, about what this place really means. Diesel Flame isn't just a restaurant. It's a reminder that every one of us has someone who believed in us when no one else did. The room grew still. Vin continued, his tone calm but powerful. So starting next month, we're launching something new, the Carmen Initiative. It's a fund named after someone who helped me when I had nothing. It'll support the families of our staff, scholarships for their kids, medical support, and help for anyone who's struggling the way I once did. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Maya's hand went to her mouth as her eyes filled with tears. Vin smiled warmly at her. This place isn't about me. It's about people like Maya, and her mum, Carmen. People who remind us that kindness still has power. Carlos, the manager, clapped first. Then the rest of the team joined in, the kind of applause that comes from deep in the heart. Maya stepped forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. Vinci's going to be so proud when she hears this. He nodded, emotion thick in his voice. She already is. I could see it in her eyes. Maya laughed softly through her tears. She used to say, the world needs fewer heroes on screens, and more heroes in life. I think you just proved her right. Vin's lips curved into a small, humble smile. Then let's make sure we all become those heroes. One plate, one act of kindness at a time. The room fell into a quiet, reverent silence. For once, it wasn't Vin Diesel the movie star standing before them. It was Vin, the man who remembered what it felt like to be unseen, and who had finally found a way to make sure no one else ever felt that way again. As the staff dispersed, energized and emotional, Maya lingered near him. Vin, she said softly, thank you for believing in us, for believing in me. He turned to her, his voice low but steady. You and your mum reminded me who I am. I should be thanking you. Outside, sunlight streamed through the restaurant's glass windows, catching the Diesel Flame sign just right. The reflection shimmered across the floor, almost like a real flame, alive, spreading light. And for the first time, Ving knew this wasn't just a restaurant, it was the beginning of a legacy built on kindness. A week later, Diesel Flame glowed brighter than ever before. Golden fairy lights draped across the ceiling. Fresh flowers adorned every table, and the hum of anticipation filled the air. Tonight wasn't just another dinner service, it was the official launch of the Carmen Initiative. Local media had gathered. Invited guests filled the room, and staff members stood proudly in crisp uniforms. But among them, none looked more radiant than Maya. Dressed in an elegant navy blue dress, she stood near the entrance, greeting guests with genuine warmth. Her eyes shimmered, not just from the lights, but from the pride swelling in her heart. As the evening began, Vin stood at the center of the room, microphone in hand. The audience quieted, all eyes on him. He began softly, "You all know me as an actor, someone who plays heroes on screen. But tonight isn't about that. Tonight is about the real heroes, the people who show up every day, who work hard, who care, who give, even when they have little to give." He paused, glancing toward Maya. "Years ago, when I had nothing but dreams and a broken-down car, a woman named Carmen Lopez helped me. She didn't know me. She didn't ask for anything. She just helped because that's who she was. And her kindness changed my life." The audience listened in silence, many already tearing up. Then continued, his voice rich with emotion. "So tonight, we honor her and everyone like her through the Carmen Initiative. It will provide education and health support to families who need it most. Because no one who works hard should ever feel forgotten." Applause filled the room. The clapping grew louder, echoing off the walls until Vin had to pause and smile. Then, he motioned to Maya. And none of this would have happened without her, Carmen's daughter. Maya Lopez. The spotlight turned to her. She froze for a moment, startled, then smiled shyly as the crowd rose to their feet in applause. Tears welled in her eyes as she looked at Vin, her gratitude silent but powerful. She took the microphone hesitantly. "My mum always told me that kindness doesn't need witnesses," she said, her voice trembling. "But tonight, I think she'd be okay with it having a few." Laughter rippled softly through the crowd. She believed that every small act mattered. Maya continued, "And Vin, thank you for showing the world she was right." As the audience cheered again, Vin placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "Your mum's watching, kid, and she's smiling." At that moment, a soft breeze drifted through the open doors, rustling the candles and curtains. The lights flickered, not ominously, but gently, like a sign. Maya looked up, smiling through her tears. "Yeah," she whispered, "I think she is." The music swelled. The guests stood clapping, and Vin raised a toast. "To kindness," he said, his voice steady, "and to the people who remind us who we are." Glasses clinked. Cameras flashed. But for Ving and Maya, it wasn't about the attention. It was about a promise kept, and a legacy that had just begun to shine. The night had ended beautifully. The guests had gone home, the lights dimmed, and only the faint hum of cleaning filled Diesel Flame's quiet halls. Vin stood near the bar, his suit jacket slung over a chair, still replaying the applause in his head. The Carmen Initiative had launched successfully, but what lingered most wasn't pride. It was peace. Maya joined him, barefoot now, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You did it," she said softly, handing him one. Vin smiled. "We did it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rain tapping gently against the large front windows. It was one of those rare, quiet moments after chaos, when everything feels complete. But then, the restaurant's front door creaked open. Vin frowned, glancing toward it. A tall, slender man stood in the doorway, dripping wet from the storm. His clothes were rough, his face wary, and his hands shook slightly as he removed his cap. "Sir," Maya began, stepping forward. "We're closed for the night," but Vin stopped her with a gentle gesture. Something about the man's eyes caught his attention, a strange mix of exhaustion and recognition. "Can I help you?" Ving asked. The man looked around, almost overwhelmed. This place," he said slowly. "It's hers, isn't it? Carmen Lopez's daughter, she works here." Maya froze. "You knew my mum?" He nodded, voice rough. "I used to. A long time ago. I worked with her at the old auto shop in LA. She helped me too, once. Before I lost everything, Vin and Maya exchanged glances. The man's clothes, his trembling hands, the rain-soaked cap. He was clearly struggling. "Come in," Vin said softly, motioning him toward the nearest booth. "Sit down, brother." The man hesitated, then obeyed. His eyes darted around the restaurant, clearly amazed by the warmth and elegance of the place. Maya brought him a towel and some hot soup. "So, you knew my mum?" she asked gently. The man nodded, tears forming in his tired eyes. "Yeah, she helped everyone, even when she couldn't help herself. I heard about her illness recently. I just wanted to say thank you before it was too late." Vin's chest tightened. Here was another life Carmen had quietly touched. Another ripple of her goodness finding its way back to them. Maya's voice broke. "She'd be so happy to see you." The man smiled faintly. "And to see this," he said, gesturing around. "This restaurant. This light. It feels like her." Then swallowed hard. "That's because it is her. Everything we're doing, it's for people like her. People like you." The man looked at him, stunned. "You mean?" Vin nodded. "Yeah, you'll have a meal, a roof, and a job, if you want it. That's what the Carmen Initiative is about." For a moment, the stranger couldn't speak. Then, quietly, he whispered, "Thank you." Maya reached out, placing her hand over his. "You're home now." Vin looked toward the window. The rain had stopped. The street outside shimmered under the lamplight, reflecting the golden glow from the restaurant sign, Diesel Flame. And for the second time that night, Vin felt it again, that same warmth Carmen once gave him when he was lost. The circle of kindness had found its way back. The next morning, sunlight streamed softly through the restaurant's tall windows. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a calm golden glow that painted Diesel Flame in warmth. Vin arrived early, coffee in hand, and found Maya already talking to the man from the night before. He sat at a table near the window, freshly showered, wearing clean clothes from the restaurant's spare set for staff. Vin approached with his usual, quiet authority but a gentle tone. "Morning, brother," he said. "Hope you slept okay." The man looked up, gratitude shining in his tired eyes. "Better than I have in years. Thank you for letting me stay." Maya smiled faintly. "He said his name is Luis," she told Vin. Vin nodded. "Luis, I'm glad you're here." He took a seat across from him. "You said you knew Carmen. How long ago was that?" Luis rubbed his hands together, as if warming up old memories. "About 15 years ago. Back then, I worked with her at a mechanic's garage in East LA. She wasn't famous, wasn't rich, but she had this way of treating people like they mattered. I was going through rough times." Maya leaned in, her voice soft. "What happened?" Luis's eyes clouded. "I got mixed up with the wrong people. Gambling, small-time hustles. Carmen found out. Instead of reporting me, she offered me help. Said I could start over. She even gave me some of her paychecks so I could pay off part of my debt." He paused, voice cracking. "I didn't deserve it. I left town anyway. And when I came back years later, everything was gone. The shop, my home, my old friends. I thought she'd forgotten me. But when I saw her story online, about her illness, I had to come." Maya's eyes shimmered with tears. "She never forgot anyone she helped," she whispered. "She used to tell me, good deeds don't disappear, they echo when you least expect them." Vin exhaled slowly, moved by the story. "She said something similar to me once. Guess her words keep traveling." Luis nodded, looking around. "This place, I can feel her here. The kindness, the second chances, it's what she always wanted." Vin rested his elbows on the table. "Then help us keep it alive," he said simply. "We're building something real here. A place that feeds people, not just with food, but with hope. You know how it feels to lose your way. You could help others find theirs." Luis's voice trembled. "You'd really give me that chance?" Vin smiled faintly. "Carmen gave me one when I didn't deserve it. It's only right I do the same." Luis lowered his head, tears slipping silently onto his hands. "I won't waste it." Maya reached over, placing her hand on his shoulder. Then, welcome to Diesel Flame, Luis. Your family now. For a long moment, no one spoke. The restaurant felt alive, not with noise or movement, but with purpose. Outside, the world bustled on, unaware of the small miracle unfolding inside a quiet Hollywood restaurant, where one woman's kindness was still rewriting lives. One person at a time. Days passed, and Luis quickly became part of the Diesel Flame rhythm. He wasn't the fastest or the strongest, but he was steady, kind, and deeply respectful, especially to the younger staff. He washed dishes, wiped tables, and stayed late without being asked. Vin often watched him from a distance, recognizing something familiar, a quiet gratitude that came from surviving hard years. Maya, too, had grown fond of Luis. He reminds me of Mum, she said one afternoon, as they prepared for the dinner rush. He doesn't talk much, but when he smiles, it feels honest. Vin smiled. Carmen would have liked him. That evening, Luis was helping in the storage room when he accidentally dropped a box of old receipts. As he bent down to collect them, something caught his eye. A small wooden drawer built into the bottom of the cabinet. It was dusty, clearly untouched for years. Curiosity tugged at him. He pulled it open. Inside lay a stack of old menus, some faded photos, and a folded piece of paper. But it was one particular photograph that made his breath stop. It was a picture of Carmen Younger, radiant, wearing a mechanic's uniform. Beside her stood a teenage boy with messy hair and grease on his hands. Luis recognized himself instantly. His fingers trembled as he lifted it closer. Written on the back, in Carmen's careful handwriting, were the words, "Luis, one day, you'll fix more than engines. You'll fix hearts." Tears filled his eyes. He hadn't known she kept this photo. All those years, he thought she'd forgotten him, yet here was proof she hadn't. He gently folded the picture and walked out into the main dining area, where Vin and Maya were busy arranging flowers. I found something," he said softly. Maya turned, curious. "What is it?" He handed her the photo. The moment she saw her mother's face, her eyes widened. This was at Mum's old garage," she whispered. Luis nodded. "She kept a picture of me. I never knew." Vin took the photo, reading the message on the back. His jaw tightened, not from sadness, but from admiration. That woman. She never stopped believing in people. Maya smiled faintly, wiping her tears. Even the ones who left. Luce's voice broke. "I let her down. She believed in me, and I disappeared." Vin placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You're here now. That's what matters." Maya looked at him, her eyes gentle. "Mum didn't keep that picture because you failed her. She kept it because you mattered." Luis covered his face for a moment, overwhelmed. "I want to do something," he said finally. "For her, and for this place." Vin tilted his head. "What do you have in mind?" Luis smiled through his tears. "Let me rebuild the community kitchen. The one that feeds the homeless. She started that dream. Let me finish it." Vin and Maya exchanged a look, both moved beyond words. "Then it's yours," Vin said softly. "We'll do it together." For Carmen, the three of them stood in silence for a moment, a new family bound not by blood, but by kindness carried forward in that quiet evening light. Carmen's words from the photo seemed to whisper through the air, "Fix hearts." And that was exactly what they were doing. The next few weeks brought a wave of purpose to Diesel Flame. The once glamorous Hollywood restaurant began to hum with a different kind of energy, not of celebrity guests or media flashbulbs, but of compassion. The back section of the restaurant, once used for storage, was now buzzing with construction sounds. Luis worked tirelessly, sleeves rolled up, covered in sawdust and paint. Vin often joined him after hours, carrying wood planks, installing shelves, or just sharing quiet stories about the past. Maya designed the space with her mother's old sketches as inspiration. "Mum always wanted a kitchen where no one would be turned away," she said, pinning a drawing of a simple serving counter on the wall. No price tags. Just food and dignity. Luis smiled, wiping sweat from his brow. Then that's what we'll build. Word spread quickly through the city. Vin Diesel's restaurant was opening a free community kitchen. Reporters called it charity, but Vin refused that label. "This isn't charity," he told one journalist. "It's justice. Everyone deserves a warm meal and a reason to believe again." The opening day came with no red carpet, no fanfare, just the smell of fresh soup, baked bread, and laughter echoing through the air. People lined up outside. Not just the homeless, but also struggling families, out-of-work veterans, and single mothers. The sign above the door read in bold, hand-painted letters, "The Carmen Kitchen, where everyone eats." Inside. Vin moved between tables, greeting people personally. Maya ladled soup beside the volunteers, her eyes bright with pride, and Luis, wearing a clean apron and a shy smile, oversaw the kitchen line, making sure everyone had enough. As he handed a bowl of stew to a small boy, he caught his reflection in the window, not the broken man who once ran from his mistakes, but someone reborn. Carmen's promise had come full circle. An elderly woman approached Maya at the counter. "You're Carmen's daughter, aren't you?" she asked. Maya nodded, surprised. "You knew her?" The woman smiled warmly. "She used to bring food to our neighborhood when my husband was sick. She never took a cent. Said she just wanted to make people feel seen." Maya's eyes shimmered. "That's exactly what we're trying to do here." Luis overheard, and a quiet pride filled his chest. Every plate he served, every smile he saw, it felt like a prayer answered. But amid the joy, he noticed something unusual. A man standing outside the glass door, watching. He looked out of place, wearing a sharp suit, holding a folder close to his chest. Luis stepped outside to greet him. "Can I help you, sir?" The man smiled faintly. "You already have, though you don't know it." He handed Luis the folder. "I'm with the Los Angeles Community Renewal Fund. We heard what you're doing here, and we want to help expand it." Luis blinked, stunned. "Expand?" "Yes," the man said. "We'd like to fund new Carmen kitchens across the state. One in every major city, starting with this one. We want you, Mr. Luis Vega, to lead the project." For a moment, Luis couldn't breathe. His throat tightened, and tears welled in his eyes. He stammered. "I was just fixing tables. I don't." Vin appeared in the doorway, smiling. "Yes, you do. You've been fixing more than tables, brother. You've been fixing lives." Maya placed her arm around Luis's shoulder. "Mum would have wanted this." Luis looked up at the bright Carmen Kitchen sign glowing above them, the words glistening in the evening sun. "Then let's do it," he said softly. "Let's feed the world, one heart at a time." Inside, the laughter and warmth continued, people sharing food, stories, and hope. And outside, under the glowing sign, 3 people stood together, bound by a promise that started years ago in a small auto shop, carried on by love, and reborn through kindness. The Carmen Kitchen was no longer just a dream, it was a movement. 6 months later, Diesel Flame had transformed into something far beyond a restaurant. It had become a symbol, a heartbeat of hope in the middle of Los Angeles. And tonight, that heartbeat was spreading. Camera crews, city officials, and volunteers from across California filled the hall. Banners lined the walls, reading the Carmen Kitchen Initiative, feeding hope, changing lives. Ving stood near the stage, adjusting his tie nervously. Though he'd spoken at film premieres and global events, this felt different. This wasn't about fame. It was about gratitude. Maya stood beside him in a simple navy dress, her mother's locket shining around her neck. Luis was in the front row, wearing a crisp white shirt, no longer the man who wandered in from the rain, but a leader, confident and calm. The music softened. The crowd hushed. Vin stepped up to the microphone. His deep voice, steady but filled with emotion. "When we opened Diesel Flame, I thought it was just another dream, another project. But one night changed everything." He paused, scanning the crowd. "I walked into my own restaurant and heard someone crying. That sound led me to a woman named Maya, to a story of loss and love, and to a mother, Carmen Lopez, whose kindness never stopped echoing." Maya's eyes glistened. Luis bowed his head, Vin continued, voice thick with feeling. Carmen didn't change the world with money or fame. She changed it with compassion. She saw broken people and believed they could be whole again. She fed strangers. She helped the lost. She gave second chances, even to people like me. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. She taught us something powerful, Vin said. That when we feed someone's hunger, we're not just filling a plate, we're feeding their soul. And when we give love, it multiplies. It doesn't fade. It grows. He looked toward Luis and smiled. Today, because of one woman's heart, the Carmen Kitchen will open in 5 more cities: San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, Fresno, and Sacramento. And this man right here, he gestured toward Luis, will lead that mission. The crowd erupted in applause. Luis stood, overwhelmed, as people cheered his name. When the noise softened, Vin looked skyward for a moment, eyes shimmering. Carmen, he whispered, voice trembling just enough to be real. You showed us what family truly means. Not by blood, but by love. Then he turned back to the microphone. This, he said, gesturing to the glowing lights, the crowd, and the banner behind him. This is your legacy. Maya joined him on stage, holding his hand. Mum always said, kindness doesn't die, she said softly, her voice carrying through the hall. It just finds new hands to live in. A hush fell over the audience. And then, something magical happened. The lights dimmed, and on the big screen behind them appeared a photograph. Carmen Lopez, smiling, in her mechanic's uniform. Grease on her cheek, her eyes bright with life. Under it, the words appeared. She fixed hearts. Vin felt his throat tighten. The crowd stood clapping, some cheering, others wiping away tears. Luis stepped forward, his voice shaking. She fixed mine too, he said quietly. The applause grew louder, echoing off the walls, filling every corner with warmth. Outside, the city lights shimmered like stars. In the distance, the Carmen Kitchen sign glowed softly, its letters reflected in every nearby window. Its light cutting through the dark. Vin, Maya, and Louise stood together on stage, 3 lives forever changed by one woman's kindness. And, as the music swelled, Vin whispered the final words of the night. Words that carried through every heart in the room. Carmen taught us that heroes don't wear capes. They wear aprons. They listen, they forgive, they believe, and no matter how dark the night, their light never fades. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Tears, smiles, and applause filled the room. In that moment, it wasn't about Vin Diesel the star, or Diesel Flame the restaurant, it was about Carmen Lopez. The woman whose spirit turned pain into purpose, and whose light would keep shining in every kitchen, every meal, and every heart she ever touched. And somewhere, in that eternal glow, Carmen was smiling.